I never imagined a piece of paper could change everything between me and my grandson. My daughter-in-law handed me a list of rules for when I could even see him. I felt my heart break, but I also knew I had to act. So I gave my son an envelope and waited. What happened next changed our family forever. Before I begin, if you've ever lived through betrayal like this, please leave a comment, and subscribe to Storyflow Diaries. I still remember the day as if it were yesterday. I had been eagerly anticipating a quiet afternoon with my grandson, little Leo, who was just 6 years old at the time. Being a grandmother had always been a joy for me. Those tiny hands, the endless questions, the way he would curl up beside me while I read him stories. But that afternoon, what was meant to be a simple visit became the day I realized that my place in my grandson's life was suddenly under siege. It all started when my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, called me out of the blue. "Mom," she said, her voice unusually clipped, "I think we need to set some ground rules before you visit Leo next week." I paused, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. Ground rules? For a grandmother? My heart sank, but I tried to stay calm. "Rules?" I echoed, trying to sound neutral. "What kind of rules?" Vanessa's words came fast and precise like bullets. No bringing gifts without asking, no staying more than an hour, no sweets, no phone pictures, no taking him out of the house. You'll need to text me the day before and I'll approve the time. My chest tightened. She was literally telling me I needed permission to spend time with my own grandson. Permission? My mind raced, trying to understand what had happened to the warmth and closeness we had always shared. The worst part wasn't just the rules themselves, it was the tone, the underlying control. She made it clear I wasn't trusted to make decisions for Leo, even in the smallest, most harmless ways. And when I tried to reason, to plead even a little, she cut me off. "These are for Leo's safety and our family's peace. You understand, right?" I swallowed hard. Of course I understood. It was a polite way of saying I was no longer welcome without conditions. I hung up the phone and sat down, trembling. I wanted to cry, but more than that, I felt a burning mix of anger and helplessness. How could someone treat family like this? I had raised my son, nurtured him, stayed up all night through fevers and heartbreaks. And now here was Vanessa drawing lines around my grandson as if I were a stranger. The days leading up to the scheduled visit were a blur. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind, trying to figure out what I could do. I called my son, Michael, hoping for some support, hoping he would see the unfairness. But the conversation left me more confused than ever. Michael sounded torn. "Mom, I know it feels strict, but Vanessa is just trying to make sure everything runs smoothly. You know how she is." Smoothly? I wanted to scream. This wasn't smooth. This was exclusion. This wasn't about schedules. It was about control. I couldn't sleep that night. I thought about Leo and how he would feel if I followed these rules blindly. I thought about Vanessa and what had triggered this sudden transformation in her demeanor. And then I thought about my son. Michael had always been the peacemaker, the one to smooth over conflicts, but this time I needed more than peace. I needed justice. I needed my grandson. The following week arrived, and I approached the house with a heavy heart. I had brought a small backpack with books, a toy, and some homemade cookies, my usual treats for Leo. I rang the doorbell, my hands slightly shaking. Vanessa opened the door, her face tight, her posture rigid. She didn't smile. "Mom," she said formally, "remember the rules." My stomach churned. I wanted to argue, to push past her, but I knew that would only backfire. I forced a polite smile, nodded, and followed her inside. Leo ran to me the moment he saw me, throwing his little arms around my neck. "Grandma!" he squealed. His joy was immediate, innocent, and it almost broke my heart because I knew the clock was ticking and rules were in place to limit this very connection. I hugged him back tightly, holding on to every second I had with him. Vanessa hovered nearby, her eyes sharp, scanning everything I did. I handed Leo a small gift I had prepared, a plush dinosaur he had mentioned wanting weeks ago. Vanessa quickly interjected, "No gifts without asking." I froze. The words felt like a slap. My grandson looked confused, holding the dinosaur, sensing the tension. I smiled gently, trying to keep the moment light. "Leo, just a little surprise from Grandma. Isn't it fun?" He beamed, and for a moment the harsh atmosphere melted. But it was fleeting. Vanessa pulled me aside later, whispering but sharp. "Mom, I really need you to follow the schedule. Don't overstep. 1 hour, no sweets, no taking him anywhere." Her words were cold, calculated, like she was setting invisible fences around my heart. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, replaying everything over and over. I couldn't stand the idea of Leo growing up under these invisible barriers, seeing me only as someone who had to follow a list of commands. I knew I needed to do something, something that would reach Michael without creating a full-blown confrontation in front of Vanessa. I thought about an envelope, a small but decisive gesture, something that said, "I will protect my bond with my grandson, but I won't fight you publicly." The next morning, I wrote a letter to Michael, poured my heart onto the page, and included a few things Vanessa would never see: my hopes for Leo, my memories of raising him, and a gentle but firm plea for him to see the imbalance. I tucked it into an envelope, addressed it carefully, and handed it to Michael when he arrived for his Sunday visit. "Read this when you have a moment alone," I whispered. His expression shifted immediately from casual to serious. I saw the tension in his jaw, the quick flicker of emotion in his eyes. I didn't need words. He understood that something had changed. As I left that day, I looked back at Vanessa's stern face and Leo waving goodbye. I didn't know what would happen next, but a quiet determination settled over me. I couldn't let rules dictated by someone else dictate the love I had for my grandson. And deep down, I felt that Michael would see the truth in my words when he read that envelope. Days later, I waited anxiously for his call. Each ring of the phone made my heart skip. And then, when it finally came, I could hear the change in Michael's voice, the way his tone held a new weight, a new understanding. "Mom," he said, quiet and deliberate, "I read your letter. We need to talk." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. When Michael called that evening, I could feel the weight of the envelope between us, though miles apart. His voice was quieter than usual, not cold, not harsh, just serious. "Mom, I've read everything," he began slowly. I could hear him pacing in the background, probably near the living room, running a hand through his hair. I I think I understand why you feel the way you do." My chest tightened. Those words sounded like a lifeline, but I knew better than to celebrate too soon. Michael was careful, hesitant, always the mediator, and Vanessa, well, Vanessa didn't yield easily. We arranged to meet that weekend at a small cafe near his office. I chose a quiet corner, hoping our conversation would remain private. When Michael arrived, he looked different, older somehow, burdened. His eyes met mine, and for the first time I sensed that my words had reached him. "Mom," he said, taking a deep breath, "I didn't realize how extreme the rules were. I thought Vanessa was just being protective, but this is more than that." I nodded, feeling a flicker of relief. Finally, he was seeing it for what it truly was. We talked for hours. I told him about the phone call, the list, the tension I felt when I held Leo. I explained the fear that if this continued, my bond with my grandson would be reduced to visiting hours, dictated by someone who barely let me breathe. Michael listened quietly, not interrupting, occasionally nodding. It was both comforting and painful. Comforting because he finally understood, painful because it took so long. "I don't know how she got to this point," he said finally, almost whispering. "Vanessa, she's always been a bit controlling, but I didn't think it would go this far. I should have seen it sooner." His words made my eyes sting. I wanted to tell him it wasn't too late, that we could fix this, but something in me knew we needed a plan. We couldn't just confront Vanessa blindly. It would make her defensive, and Leo would feel it. I had to be careful, for his sake. That evening, as I walked back to my car, I kept replaying Vanessa's list of rules. No gifts, no sweets, no taking him anywhere. I whispered them under my breath. My hands clenched, then relaxed. I realized that while Vanessa had the rules, I had something stronger, my relationship with Leo. Love, trust, shared history, memories that no list could erase. I smiled faintly, imagining his little face lighting up when I read to him, or when we baked cookies together, carefully hidden from Vanessa's eyes. The following week, Michael called again, softer this time. "Mom," he said, "we need to set boundaries too, not just follow hers. I don't want you to feel like you have to ask permission to love your grandson." Relief washed over me, but I knew the hard part was coming. Vanessa would notice, and she would resist. "Michael," I said gently, "whatever we decide, we need to protect Leo from getting caught in the middle. He's just a child." He agreed, and I could feel a subtle shift in his tone, a new resolve forming. On the next scheduled visit, I brought my little backpack, but I approached it differently. No cookies, no gifts, just me and Leo. I arrived at their house, trying to mask the nervous energy buzzing in my chest. Vanessa opened the door, as sharp as ever. Her eyes flicked to me, then to Michael, as if seeking reassurance. "Mom," she said, "remember the rules." I nodded politely, my smile calm. Inside, Leo ran to me, his excitement uncontainable. He hugged me tight, and I hugged him back, trying to soak in every second without letting the tension pierce the moment. During that visit, I noticed small changes in Vanessa's demeanor. She was alert, almost tense, watching my every move. But Michael had subtly shifted too, standing a little closer, speaking in gentle tones that reminded Vanessa she wasn't the sole decision-maker. I realized then that this wasn't just about me or Leo. It was about restoring balance in a household that had become a battleground over control. Later, as Leo played quietly with his blocks, I whispered to Michael, "Did you get a chance to think about the letter?" He nodded, and his expression softened. "Mom, it made me see what I've been ignoring. I don't want you to feel like an outsider in your own family." His words struck a chord deep in my heart. I felt hope, fragile yet persistent, like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. But just as I was beginning to feel relief, Vanessa approached, holding a folded piece of paper. She handed it to Michael, her tone icy. "Mom wrote some things about the house rules," she said, her eyes narrowing. My stomach sank. Michael opened it carefully, scanning her instructions. I held my breath. This was the test, the moment where everything we had discussed would be challenged. Michael looked up at me, his eyes steady. "Mom," he said, calmly but firmly, "we're going to discuss this together. Leo's time with you isn't negotiable based on a list of rules. You are his grandmother, and your love isn't something that can be timed or controlled." Vanessa froze. I could see her processing, calculating, realizing her control over this relationship was no longer absolute. For the rest of the visit, Vanessa maintained her composure, but I noticed subtle cracks. She spoke less, smiled less, and for the first time she didn't try to hover over every interaction. Leo, blissfully unaware of the adult tension, played beside me, laughing and asking me questions. I felt a quiet triumph, knowing that even if only temporarily, love had found its way past the walls of control. That evening, Michael called again, his voice quieter than usual. "Mom," he said, "I think we need to have a proper family discussion. Vanessa and I need to understand what boundaries are fair for everyone, but also make sure you're not sidelined. I want Leo to have you in his life without feeling like it's a negotiation." My heart swelled. Finally, my son was stepping into his role, not just as a peacemaker, but as a protector of our family's emotional core. In the following weeks, I noticed gradual changes. Visits became smoother, rules less rigid. Vanessa still had her moments of sharpness, but Michael stood firm, gently reminding her of the balance we were trying to achieve. And Leo? He was happy. Unknowingly, he was at the center of our quiet revolution, thriving in the love we refused to let be restricted. One evening, as I tucked Leo into bed after a particularly joyful visit, he looked up at me and whispered, "Grandma, can you read me the dinosaur story again tomorrow?" My heart ached with emotion. Those simple words, spoken by a child who didn't yet understand adult conflicts, carried the weight of victory. My presence in his life wasn't something to be measured by rules. It was a gift, freely given and freely received. That night, I sat alone in my living room, reflecting. The envelope, the letter, the courage to speak honestly to Michael, they had all mattered. I had taken a risk, one that could have fractured our family further, but instead it had become the catalyst for change. I realized that sometimes love required boldness, a willingness to step forward even when the path is uncertain. And in that quiet moment, I promised myself that I would continue to protect my bond with Leo, to nurture it with patience, understanding, and unwavering love. Whatever rules came next, whatever obstacles appeared, I would meet them with calm determination. Because this was bigger than lists, bigger than arguments. It was about family, about connection, and about ensuring that my grandson would always know he was loved unconditionally. The next few weeks felt like walking a delicate line, but I could finally sense the change. Vanessa's stance, while still cautious, had softened more than I could have imagined. I wasn't sure if it was seeing Michael take a firmer position or simply witnessing Leo's happiness when I was around, but it felt like a shift, a small opening that I could cautiously move through. Every visit became a test of patience, empathy, and quiet diplomacy. One sunny Saturday morning, I arrived at their house with Leo's favorite book under my arm. Vanessa opened the door, and I braced myself for a clipped reminder about rules. Instead, she just nodded, her expression neutral. "Mom," she said, almost hesitantly, "Leo's ready." I smiled gently and stepped inside. Leo ran to me as always, throwing his arms around my neck. I hugged him tight, savoring the moment without letting any tension seep in. That day we spent nearly 2 hours together, something that would have been impossible a month ago. Leo chattered endlessly about his friends, his school, and the tiny adventures he had each day. I listened, laughed, and offered gentle guidance when needed. Michael stayed nearby, quietly observing, occasionally joining in to clarify something or answer a question. Vanessa remained in the background, scrolling her phone but glancing up more frequently, as though checking not to control but to ensure everything was okay. As the visit came to an end, Vanessa approached me quietly. Her voice was soft, almost uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Mom, I know I was strict before. I thought I was protecting him, but I see now that it pushed you away instead. I'm sorry." My heart caught in my throat. I wanted to reach out and hug her, to tell her that her apology meant more than words, but I held back, nodding gently. Thank you, Vanessa. That means a lot. We're all learning here. Leo's happiness is what matters most. She hesitated, then gave me a small, tentative smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. That evening, I sat alone in my living room, reflecting. The envelope, the letter, the careful conversations with Michael, they had all been necessary. I realized that standing firm didn't mean creating conflict, it meant protecting what mattered most. My relationship with Leo was sacred, and even when it felt like the world, or at least Vanessa, was against me, love found a way to persevere. A few days later, Michael called me unexpectedly. His voice was quieter than usual, tinged with concern. "Mom, Vanessa wants to talk to you. She's ready to discuss some things. Can you come over tonight?" I hesitated. After everything, I wasn't sure if this was a trap or a genuine attempt at reconciliation. But I trusted Michael's judgment, and more importantly, I trusted that my own intentions were pure. "Of course," I said, trying to mask the anxiety in my voice. That evening, I arrived at their house, and Vanessa greeted me at the door. There was a tension in the air, but it wasn't hostile. It was tentative, almost fragile. We sat in the living room while Michael made tea for all of us. Vanessa cleared her throat. "Mom, I think I was too strict with the rules. I've realized that I was trying to control too much, and it wasn't fair to you or to Leo. I want to find a balance where he can have both of us in his life without conflict." My eyes welled up, but I kept my voice steady. "Vanessa, I appreciate you saying that. I never wanted conflict. I only wanted to love Leo and be part of his life. That's all I've ever wanted." The conversation that followed was long and emotional. We discussed boundaries, yes, but more importantly, we discussed respect, trust, and the importance of working as a team. Vanessa admitted her fears that I would spoil Leo, that I would give him too many treats, or that my influence might interfere with her parenting. I reassured her gently, explaining that my role as a grandmother was not to replace her, but to enrich Leo's life, to offer love, guidance, and support. Michael mediated with calm authority, helping both of us articulate our feelings without blame. For the first time, I felt like we were truly on the same side. It was a fragile truce, but it felt real. By the end of the evening, Vanessa smiled, not fully, not without lingering hesitation, but enough that I felt hope. It was progress, and sometimes progress was all you needed to begin healing. Over the next month, the dynamics of our family continued to shift. Visits became longer, more relaxed, and more joyful. Leo's laughter filled the house in ways that hadn't been possible before. I could see the change in him, the trust, the comfort, the sense of belonging that comes from being loved unconditionally by a grandmother. Vanessa still had moments of caution, but she no longer micromanaged our interactions. Michael's steady presence kept the balance, ensuring that love, not fear, guided our family. One afternoon, as I helped Leo with a school project, Vanessa entered the room quietly. She watched for a moment, then spoke softly. "Mom, can I help too?" I looked at her, surprised. "Of course, Vanessa, you're part of this too." She joined in, guiding Leo gently. It was a small gesture, but it carried enormous weight. It showed that walls could be dismantled, that fears could be replaced with cooperation, and that love could grow stronger when shared rather than guarded. That evening, as Leo had gone to bed, Michael called me into the kitchen. "Mom," he said, a smile in his voice, "I just want to thank you. The envelope, the letter, the careful conversations with Vanessa, they had all changed things. Vanessa sees it now, and so do I. We're finally moving forward as a family, not as individuals at odds with each other." My ears filled with tears. Michael, you did this too. You stood up, guided, and listened. Without you, none of this would have been possible." He chuckled softly. "We all did our part. And Leo, he's the real winner here." The following weekend, we decided to have a small family outing, something simple, a picnic in the park. Leo ran ahead, laughing, his hands covered in grass and dirt, his joy uncontained. Vanessa followed, smiling more openly than I had seen in months. Michael walked beside me, gently guiding the conversation and ensuring that tensions remained low. I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. As we sat on a blanket, watching Leo play with other children, I realized something important. Love was resilient. It could withstand control, fear, and cold words. It could survive rules, lists, and cold words. And when nurtured, it could grow stronger than ever. I felt a profound gratitude for the lessons we had all learned, the courage to speak honestly, the patience to wait, and the wisdom to understand each other's fears without letting them dictate our lives. That night, as I tucked Leo into bed, he whispered, "Grandma, I love you. Can we play tomorrow too?" I hugged him tightly, feeling tears prick my eyes. "Always, sweetheart, always." In that moment, I knew that no list, no rules, and no control could ever take away the bond we had built, a bond forged through love, patience, and unwavering commitment. And as I left that night, walking back to my car under the soft glow of streetlights, I felt a sense of quiet triumph. The envelope, the letter, the courage to stand firm and speak honestly, they had all mattered. They had shifted the tides, broken down walls, and reminded everyone in our family what truly mattered: love, trust, and connection. The next few weeks felt like walking a delicate line, but I could finally sense the change. Vanessa's stance, while still cautious, had softened more than I could have imagined. I wasn't sure if it was seeing Michael take a firmer position or simply witnessing Leo's happiness when I was around, but it felt like a shift, a small opening that I could cautiously move through. Every visit became a test of patience, empathy, and quiet diplomacy. One sunny Saturday morning, I arrived at their house with Leo's favorite book under my arm. Vanessa opened the door, and I braced myself for a clipped reminder about rules. Instead, she just nodded, her expression neutral. "Mom," she said, almost hesitantly, "Leo's ready." I smiled gently and stepped inside. Leo ran to me as always, throwing his arms around my neck. I hugged him tight, savoring the moment without letting any tension seep in. That day we spent nearly 2 hours together, something that would have been impossible a month ago. Leo chattered endlessly about his friends, his school, and the tiny adventures he had each day. I listened, laughed, and offered gentle guidance when needed. Michael stayed nearby, quietly observing, occasionally joining in to clarify something or answer a question. Vanessa remained in the background, scrolling her phone but glancing up more frequently, as though checking not to control but to ensure everything was okay. As the visit came to an end, Vanessa approached me quietly. Her voice was soft, almost uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Mom, I know I was strict before. I thought I was protecting him, but I see now that it pushed you away instead. I'm sorry." My heart caught in my throat. I wanted to reach out and hug her, to tell her that her apology meant more than words, but I held back, nodding gently. "Thank you, Vanessa. That means a lot. We're all learning here. Leo's happiness is what matters most." She hesitated, then gave me a small, tentative smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. That evening, I sat alone in my living room, reflecting. The envelope, the letter, the careful conversations with Michael, they had all been necessary. I realized that standing firm didn't mean creating conflict, it meant protecting what mattered most. My relationship with Leo was sacred, and even when it felt like the world, or at least Vanessa, was against me, love found a way to persevere. A few days later, Michael called me unexpectedly. His voice was quieter than usual, tinged with concern. "Mom, Vanessa wants to talk to you. She's ready to discuss some things. Can you come over tonight?" I hesitated. After everything, I wasn't sure if this was a trap or a genuine attempt at reconciliation. But I trusted Michael's judgment, and more importantly, I trusted that my own intentions were pure. "Of course," I said, trying to mask the anxiety in my voice. That evening, I arrived at their house, and Vanessa greeted me at the door. There was a tension in the air, but it wasn't hostile. It was tentative, almost fragile. We sat in the living room while Michael made tea for all of us. Vanessa cleared her throat. "Mom, I think I was too strict with the rules. I've realized that I was trying to control too much, and it wasn't fair to you or to Leo. I want to find a balance where he can have both of us in his life without conflict." My eyes welled up, but I kept my voice steady. "Vanessa, I appreciate you saying that. I never wanted conflict. I only wanted to love Leo and be part of his life. That's all I've ever wanted." The conversation that followed was long and emotional. We discussed boundaries, yes, but more importantly, we discussed respect, trust, and the importance of working as a team. Vanessa admitted her fears that I would spoil Leo, that I would give him too many treats, or that my influence might interfere with her parenting. I reassured her gently, explaining that my role as a grandmother was not to replace her, but to enrich Leo's life, to offer love, guidance, and support. Michael mediated with calm authority, helping both of us articulate our feelings without blame. For the first time, I felt like we were truly on the same side. It was a fragile truce, but it felt real. By the end of the evening, Vanessa smiled, not fully, not without lingering hesitation, but enough that I felt hope. It was progress, and sometimes progress was all you needed to begin healing. Over the next month, the dynamics of our family continued to shift. Visits became longer, more relaxed, and more joyful. Leo's laughter filled the house in ways that hadn't been possible before. I could see the change in him, the trust, the comfort, the sense of belonging that comes from being loved unconditionally by a grandmother. Vanessa still had moments of caution, but she no longer micromanaged our interactions. Michael's steady presence kept the balance, ensuring that love, not fear, guided our family. One afternoon, as I helped Leo with a school project, Vanessa entered the room quietly. She watched for a moment, then spoke softly. "Mom, can I help too?" I looked at her, surprised. "Of course, Vanessa, you're part of this too." She joined in, guiding Leo gently. It was a small gesture, but it carried enormous weight. It showed that walls could be dismantled, that fears could be replaced with cooperation, and that love could grow stronger when shared rather than guarded. That evening, as Leo had gone to bed, Michael called me into the kitchen. "Mom," he said, a smile in his voice, "I just want to thank you. The envelope, the letter, the careful conversations with Vanessa, they had all changed things. Vanessa sees it now, and so do I. We're finally moving forward as a family, not as individuals at odds with each other." My ears filled with tears. "Michael, you did this too. You stood up, guided, and listened. Without you, none of this would have been possible." He chuckled softly. "We all did our part. And Leo, he's the real winner here." The following weekend, we decided to have a small family outing, something simple, a picnic in the park. Leo ran ahead, laughing, his hands covered in grass and dirt, his joy uncontained. Vanessa followed, smiling more openly than I had seen in months. Michael walked beside me, gently guiding the conversation and ensuring that tensions remained low. I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. As we sat on a blanket, watching Leo play with other children, I realized something important. Love was resilient. It could withstand control, fear, and cold words. It could survive rules, lists, and cold words. And when nurtured, it could grow stronger than ever. I felt a profound gratitude for the lessons we had all learned, the courage to speak honestly, the patience to wait, and the wisdom to understand each other's fears without letting them dictate our lives. That night, as I tucked Leo into bed, he whispered, "Grandma, I love you. Can we play tomorrow too?" I hugged him tightly, feeling tears prick my eyes. "Always, sweetheart, always." In that moment, I knew that no list, no rules, and no control could ever take away the bond we had built, a bond forged through love, patience, and unwavering commitment. And as I left that night, walking back to my car under the soft glow of streetlights, I felt a sense of quiet triumph. The envelope, the letter, the courage to stand firm and speak honestly, they had all mattered. They had shifted the tides, broken down walls, and reminded everyone in our family what truly mattered: love, trust. Over the next few weeks, life felt almost normal again, though I knew better than to take that piece for granted. Vanessa was still cautious, still protective of Leo, but the harshness of her earlier rules had softened. She no longer hovered every second of our visits, and she even laughed occasionally at my silly jokes with Leo. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but it mattered. One afternoon, I arrived for a visit carrying a small handmade puzzle for Leo. Vanessa opened the door and paused, a slight hesitation on her face. "Mom," she began, then shook her head. "It's fine. He'll love it." The words were casual, but the relief in my chest was enormous. Even the smallest acknowledgement from her now felt like a victory. Leo ran to me, arms outstretched, and I scooped him up in a warm hug. "Grandma, look what I built today," he exclaimed. I laughed, hugging him tightly. It was moments like these that reminded me why I had fought so hard, why the envelope and the letter to Michael mattered so much. My bond with Leo wasn't something that could be regulated by rules or lists. It was built on years of shared memories, trust, and unconditional love. As we played, I noticed Michael observing quietly from the couch. He caught my eye and gave a subtle nod, a small signal that he was proud of the progress we had made. He had become the quiet guardian of our family's balance, ensuring that Vanessa's concerns were heard without letting them dominate. It was a delicate role, and he was handling it beautifully. After about an hour, Vanessa approached, her expression thoughtful. "Mom," she said softly, "I want to apologize again for the rules. I know I was too strict. I realize now that Leo needs both of us in his life, and I shouldn't have tried to control everything." My throat tightened, and I forced a calm smile. "Vanessa, I appreciate you saying that. I only ever wanted to love Leo and be a positive part of his life. That's all I've ever wanted." She nodded, then returned to the couch, a small but genuine smile forming on her lips. That evening, after Leo had gone to bed, I reflected on the journey we had taken. The envelope I had handed Michael, filled with my heartfelt words, had been the catalyst for change. It wasn't confrontational, it wasn't dramatic, it was honest, and it had forced our family to face difficult truths, to communicate, and to understand each other in ways we hadn't before. A few days later, Michael called me with a mixture of excitement and caution in his voice. "Mom," he said, "Vanessa and I have decided we want to set up a weekly family night. One night a week where it's just you, me, Vanessa, and Leo. No distractions, no work, no arguments, just family time." I felt tears prick my eyes. Michael, that's wonderful. I would love that. He laughed softly, a sound of relief. I think it will help all of us reconnect, not just with Leo, but with each other. Vanessa's worried about making mistakes, but this will be a safe space for all of us. That week, we had our official first family night. Vanessa prepared snacks, I brought a few storybooks, and Michael set up a small game for all of us to play. Leo was overjoyed, running from one activity to another, laughing and squealing in delight. For the first time in months, the atmosphere felt light and natural. Vanessa's sternness had melted into warmth, and she even joined in our silly games, laughing more freely than I had seen in a long time. During a quiet moment, Vanessa pulled me aside. "Mom," she said, her voice gentle, "I want to thank you for your patience, your love, and for giving Michael the courage to see things clearly. I was scared that I'd lose control, but I see now that love isn't control. Leo's happiness matters more than rules." I reached out and held her hands. "Vanessa, I only ever wanted to be part of his life, and I think we're finding a way to do that together." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. As the weeks turned into months, our family began to settle into a new rhythm. Leo thrived, his laughter filling the house more often than ever. Vanessa continued to soften, trusting that my presence in Leo's life was not a threat, but a gift. Michael's quiet guidance ensured our family worked as a team, addressing conflicts with calm honesty rather than tension and anger. I began to notice subtle changes in myself, too. I was no longer constantly anxious before visits, no longer dreading the rigid rules or fearing that I would be pushed out of Leo's life. I had learned that love required courage, patience, and honesty, but also that it required boundaries, respect, and trust. Our family had grown stronger, not in spite of conflict, but because of how we faced it together. One evening, after a particularly joyful visit, Michael and Vanessa invited me to stay for dinner. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental. We sat together at the table, sharing stories, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. Leo chattered endlessly, a bright light in the room, while Vanessa and I exchanged smiles that no longer carried tension or fear. I realized then that the envelope, the letter, and the courage to speak honestly had not just restored my bond with Leo, they had healed our family in ways I hadn't imagined. Later that night, as I tucked Leo into bed, he whispered, "Grandma, can we have story time every night?" I laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Of course, sweetheart, every night if you want." He snuggled into the blankets, peaceful and content, and I felt a profound sense of gratitude. My bond with him had survived challenges, strict rules, and fear, and it had emerged stronger than ever. As I walked home that night, the streetlights casting soft shadows on the pavement, I reflected on the journey we had taken. The envelope had been a small gesture, but it carried enormous weight. It had sparked honest communication, illuminated fears and misunderstandings, and ultimately brought our family closer together. I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak your truth calmly, without anger, without resentment, and trust that love will guide the outcome. And in the quiet of the night, I whispered a promise to myself and to Leo that no matter what challenges arose, I would always protect our bond. I would continue to love him fiercely, support him unconditionally, and be a constant presence in his life. Just when I thought the worst was behind us, life reminded me that peace is fragile and often comes with new challenges. Vanessa's initial softening had made visits easier, family nights more joyful, and Leo happier than I had ever seen him. Yet, despite the progress, I could sense a tension beneath the surface that hadn't entirely disappeared. Subtle glances, careful words, and the faint trace of hesitation told me that Vanessa was still navigating her fear of losing control. One afternoon, I arrived at their house for a routine visit, carrying a small craft project for Leo. He ran to me with uncontainable excitement, but Vanessa's expression froze for a moment as she watched us. "Mom," she said, almost too casually, "let's keep today short. I have a few errands." I forced a calm smile, not wanting to escalate anything. "Of course," I replied, letting my voice stay gentle, keeping the warmth for Leo. We spent the next 30 minutes laughing, building the craft, and reading stories, but midway through, I noticed Vanessa hovering nearby, her posture stiff, her eyes darting between us. She was more watchful than before, and I could feel a small wave of tension rising. Leo, blissfully unaware, kept chattering, but I felt the shift immediately. It reminded me that the road to healing wasn't linear. Progress could always be tested, especially when fear and habit lingered in someone's heart. That evening, Michael called me, his voice low and concerned. "Mom," he said, "Vanessa's feeling stressed again. I think she's afraid that you'll influence Leo too much, even though she doesn't say it directly." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "I understand, Michael. I just want what's best for him, and I don't want her fear to create tension between us." He agreed, and together we planned a calm, measured approach for the next visit. The following week, I decided to let Vanessa set the pace. I arrived with no gifts, no surprises, just me and Leo. As he ran to hug me, I whispered, "Let's play quietly today." We spent the hour building blocks, reading stories, and talking about his school projects. Vanessa observed, occasionally commenting gently, but she didn't interrupt or impose rules. It was a tentative truce, but it showed progress. By the end, Vanessa even smiled when Leo proudly displayed his block tower. Yet, despite these small victories, I knew there was more to do. Vanessa's fear wasn't entirely unreasonable. She was a new mother once, protective and cautious, but her need for control had tested the bonds of our family. I reflected on the envelope I had given Michael months ago. That small act had set a chain reaction in motion, opening communication and creating understanding. Now it seemed another conversation was needed to solidify trust and ensure that Leo's happiness remained the priority. A few days later, Michael arranged for us to sit down as a family. Vanessa was nervous, but she agreed. I could see it in the way her hands fidgeted, in the tight line of her lips. "Mom," she said softly, "I want to talk about the rules again. I know I overreacted before, but I still feel anxious about some things. I don't want to hurt Leo or lose my sense of control." I reached for her hand gently. "Vanessa, I understand. We all want what's best for him, but control isn't protection. Love is. And if we work together, Leo can have all of us without fear or tension." Michael mediated, guiding the conversation calmly. "Vanessa, we're not taking away your role, your guidance, or your protection, but we're all learning that love can't be measured in rules or permissions. Leo needs both of us, grandma and parents, to feel secure, loved, and free to be himself." She nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. It was the first time I saw her vulnerability fully exposed, the fear behind the strictness, the love behind the rules. That evening marked a turning point. The tension that had lingered for months began to ease, replaced with tentative trust. Vanessa admitted that she had been afraid of losing her influence over Leo, but she realized that my presence didn't diminish her role, it enriched it. Michael's quiet strength, guiding both of us with patience and understanding, had created a safe space for honesty and reconciliation. Over the next few weeks, our family visits became more natural. Leo thrived in the warmth of a balanced household, where love wasn't dictated by rules, but expressed freely. Vanessa joined in our games more often, laughing alongside us. Michael maintained calm boundaries, ensuring that tensions didn't flare. And I, for the first time in months, felt fully present, relaxed, joyful, and free to love my grandson without restraint. One evening, as I tucked Leo into bed, he whispered, "Grandma, can we make a new game tomorrow? I want you to play with me." I smiled, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Of course, sweetheart, we can make a new game every day if you want." He snuggled into his blanket, peaceful and content, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. This was why I'd fought quietly for months, why the envelope and letter had mattered so much. My bond with Leo was unshakable, a bond strengthened by honesty, patience, and unwavering love. That night, after leaving their house, I reflected on the journey. The envelope had been a small act, but its impact had been enormous. It sparked communication, revealed hidden fears, and set the stage for reconciliation. It reminded Michael of his role as a mediator and protector, encouraged Vanessa to confront her anxieties, and allowed me to assert my place in Leo's life with integrity and love. I also realized something profound. Families are complex, messy, and sometimes painful. Love alone isn't always enough. It requires courage, honesty, and patience. It requires moments where we speak our truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. And it requires trust that ultimately what binds a family together is not control or fear, but the shared commitment to nurture, protect, and love one another unconditionally. As I walked home under the quiet glow of streetlights, I felt a sense of calm triumph. The challenges weren't over, life rarely unfolds perfectly, but I knew that we had laid a foundation strong enough to withstand future storms. Leo's laughter, Vanessa's tentative warmth, and Michael's steady presence were proof that love, when guided by patience and understanding, could overcome even the deepest fears. And as I whispered a promise to myself and to Leo, I knew one thing with certainty: I would always protect this bond, nurture it with care, and be a constant presence in his life. No rules, no lists, and no fear could ever take that away. Love, I realized, was far stronger than control, and it was worth every moment of struggle, every sleepless night, and every quiet act of courage. It had been months since the envelope, the letter, and those difficult conversations with Michael and Vanessa, but I could still remember the tension of that first phone call, the sting of the list, and the ache of being told I needed permission to love my grandson. Now, as I prepare for another visit, I felt a quiet sense of anticipation. Something had shifted in our family, but I knew the final pieces of understanding still needed to fall into place. I arrived that afternoon carrying a small basket of art supplies for Leo. Vanessa answered the door and, to my surprise, smiled warmly. "Mom," she said, almost shyly, "Leo's waiting for you." My heart lifted. Even the small gestures now felt monumental, evidence of her growing trust. Leo ran into my arms, his laughter spilling over, and I hugged him tightly, savoring every second of that joyous reunion. As we settled at the table to draw and color, Vanessa joined us, cautiously at first. She suggested a game, then laughed when Leo added his own silly rules. I watched, heart swelling as she relaxed, letting herself enjoy the moment rather than policing it. Michael sat nearby, quietly observing, occasionally offering gentle guidance, ensuring that the balance we had worked so hard to achieve remained intact. At one point, Vanessa looked at me, her expression open and vulnerable. "Mom," she said, softly, "I've realized something. I was so afraid of losing control, but what I really needed was to trust you. Leo needs all of us, and I don't want my fear to take that away from him." My throat tightened, but I held back tears, nodding gently. Vanessa, I understand, and I want you to know that I'm not here to replace you or make things difficult. I'm here to love Leo, support him, and be part of his life, just as you are. The conversation flowed naturally after that, with Michael guiding us gently, helping both of us articulate our fears and hopes without blame. Vanessa admitted her insecurities, and I shared mine, the fear of being pushed out, the worry that my bond with Leo could be diminished by rules and lists. For the first time, we were speaking openly, honestly, without the shadows of tension or resentment. Leo, blissfully unaware of the adult emotions swirling around him, continued to draw, laugh, and chatter. He handed us his pictures proudly, and Vanessa praised him sincerely without any of the earlier rigidity. I felt a quiet triumph in those moments, a recognition that love, honesty, and patience had begun to heal even the deepest wounds. Later that evening, Michael suggested a small family meeting, a time for all of us to set expectations and boundaries openly. Vanessa agreed, cautiously, and I felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. I wanted this to be the turning point where the rules no longer dictated our interactions, where trust replaced fear, and where Leo could feel the full warmth of all the people who loved him. When we sat together, Vanessa spoke first. I've been thinking about the rules, the list, and I realize now that I let fear drive my decisions. I didn't trust you, Mom, and I didn't even trust myself sometimes. But Leo deserves better than that. He deserves all of us fully present, without tension or restrictions. My heart ached with emotion. I reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. Vanessa, that means more than you know. We can create a family where everyone's voice is heard and Leo can feel love without fear or barriers. Michael added, Mom, Vanessa, we've come a long way, but the most important thing is that Leo feels secure and loved. That's the priority. We all need to support each other, respect each other's roles, and communicate honestly. That's how we protect him and each other. Vanessa nodded, her eyes glistening. I understand. I want that too. For the first time in months, there was no defensiveness, no tension, just understanding, acceptance, and the promise of a stronger family bond. After the meeting, we spent the evening together with Leo. We played games, read stories, and laughed, a sound that felt like a balm for all the months of struggle and fear. Vanessa joined in fully, and Michael maintained the quiet, steady presence that had become our anchor. And Leo? He was radiant, oblivious to the struggles that had preceded this moment, but thriving in the love and harmony that surrounded him. Later, as I tucked Leo to bed, he whispered, Grandma, can we do this every week? I love it when we're all together. My heart swelled, and I hugged him tightly. Of course, sweetheart, every week and as often as we can. He smiled and drifted off to sleep, peaceful and content. In that moment, I felt the full weight of everything we had endured, the envelope, the letter, the courage to speak honestly, the patience to wait for understanding, and I realized how deeply it had all mattered. That night, I sat alone reflecting on the journey. The battles we had faced were not just about rules or control. They were about love, trust, and the courage to assert your place in the lives of those you care about. I realized that sometimes the smallest acts, like handing an envelope filled with truth, could spark profound change, healing, and reconciliation. And as I whispered a promise to myself and to Leo, I knew our bond was unshakable. No rules, no fears, and no misunderstandings could ever take away the love we shared. I had fought quietly, patiently, and with courage, and the reward was far greater than I could have imagined. A family united by love, trust, and understanding. At the end of that week, Michael called me. Mom, he said, voice warm and steady, I just want to thank you. Everything you did, the envelope, the letter, the patience, it changed everything. Vanessa sees it now, and so do I. Leo's happiness is a direct result of your courage and love. I smiled, feeling tears prick my eyes. Michael, you helped too. Without your guidance, patience, and support, none of this would have been possible. He laughed softly. We all did our part, and Leo, he's the real winner here. As I hung up the phone, I felt a profound sense of closure. The envelope had been more than paper. It had been hope, courage, and the catalyst for honesty and reconciliation. It reminded me that love, when expressed with patience and integrity, could overcome fear, misunderstanding, and even control. Looking back, I realized that every challenge we had faced, the rules, the tension, the moments of fear, had been an opportunity for growth. Vanessa had learned to trust, Michael had learned to assert, and I had learned the power of calm courage. And Leo, the heart of it all, had emerged surrounded by love, trust, and security. As I whispered a promise to myself that night, I knew that no matter what obstacles came our way, I would always protect my bond with Leo. I would continue to nurture it, support it, and love it fiercely, because love, I realized, was stronger than fear, control, or rules. And that bond, once threatened, was now unbreakable. The days that followed felt lighter, almost surreal. The tension that had once filled Vanessa's house had melted away, replaced with a warmth I hadn't felt in months. The envelope I had handed to Michael, the letter I had poured my heart into, it all seemed like a distant memory now, yet I knew its impact would echo in our family for the rest of our lives. Every visit with Leo now felt effortless. Every laugh shared with him a balm for the months of worry, frustration, and fear. That Saturday, I arrived with a basket of snacks and a small puzzle for Leo. Vanessa greeted me at the door with a genuine smile. "Mom," she said softly, "Leo's been excited all morning for you to come." My heart lifted as Leo ran to hug me, his arms tight around my neck. "Grandma, I have a new dinosaur drawing to show you," he exclaimed. I laughed, hugging him, feeling a wave of pure, unfiltered love. We settled into the living room, and I watched Vanessa help him pick out colored pencils. She smiled as he explained each part of his drawing, and I realized how far we'd come. She wasn't hovering, she wasn't policing our interactions. She was participating, joining in the joy of our time together. Michael sat nearby, quietly observing, the calm anchor that had allowed all of this to happen. For the first time in months, I could feel peace in the household, a genuine harmony that wasn't forced. As Leo showed me his drawing, Vanessa leaned closer. "Mom," she said quietly, "I want to thank you for your patience, your love, and for giving Michael the courage to stand up for this family. I was scared I'd lose control, but I see now that your love for Leo doesn't compete with mine, it complements it." My throat tightened and I fought back tears. "Vanessa, all I've ever wanted is to be part of his life, to support you and to love him. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less." She nodded, and for a moment the past months of tension, fear, and misunderstanding seemed to vanish. Michael, sensing the gravity of the moment, joined us. "Leo is lucky to have both of you in his life," he said, voice calm but firm, "and I'm lucky to have both of you in mine. We've all learned something from this experience, that family isn't about rules, control, or fear. It's about love, trust, and being present for one another." Vanessa's eyes glistened, and I felt a sense of closure settle deep within me. That evening, we decided to have a small family picnic in the backyard. Leo ran around, chasing butterflies and laughing with abandon, while Vanessa and I prepared snacks together. Michael set up a blanket and a small speaker for music. The air was filled with joy, the kind of unguarded laughter I had missed for so long. It was a simple afternoon, yet it carried the weight of months of struggle, patience, and growth. As Leo ran back to show us a new flower he'd found, Vanessa turned to me and said softly, "Mom, I want you to know that you're a part of this family, and I trust you. Thank you for never giving up." I felt tears spill down my cheeks. "Vanessa, it's never been about control. It's about love, and love always finds a way, even when the path is difficult." She nodded, and for a moment, the past months of tension, fear, and misunderstanding seemed to vanish. Later that evening, as I tucked Leo into bed, he whispered, "Grandma, can we have story time every night from now on?" I laughed softly, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Of course, sweetheart, every night if you want." He snuggled into his blankets, peaceful and content, and I felt a wave of pure gratitude. My bond with him had survived obstacles, strict rules, and fear, and it had emerged stronger than ever. Later that night, I reflected on the journey, the envelope, the letter, the courage to speak honestly to Michael, and the patience to navigate Vanessa's fears. They had all mattered. They had been catalysts for honesty, trust, and reconciliation. I realized that families are complex and sometimes messy, but love, patience, and courage can heal even the deepest rifts. And now, watching Vanessa and Michael engage with Leo, seeing his joy, I knew that our family had learned this lesson together. The next morning, as I walked through the park with Leo and Michael, we shared laughter and small stories. Vanessa called occasionally to check on us, her voice light, warm, and unguarded. There were no rules, no lists, no strict boundaries, only love. Leo skipped ahead, holding my hand, his laughter echoing, and I realized that the months of struggle had been worth every moment. Later, as I watched Leo asleep in my arms, I whispered a promise to him and to myself. No matter what challenges come, I will always protect this bond, nurture it, and love him fiercely. Nothing, neither fear, control, or misunderstanding, can ever take away what we share. My love for him is steadfast, unwavering, and eternal. That night I sat in quiet reflection, thinking about how far we'd come. The envelope was a small act, a gesture of honesty and courage, yet it had transformed our family. It had opened hearts, repaired trust, and reminded us all what truly matters: love, respect, and connection. I understood now that even the hardest challenges can lead to profound growth when approached with patience, honesty, and courage. And as I closed my eyes, I felt a sense of peace unlike anything I'd known for months. Our family had emerged stronger, closer, and more united than ever. Leo's laughter, Vanessa's warmth, and Michael's calm guidance were proof that love, when nurtured, can heal even the deepest wounds. I realized then that the true power of family isn't control or rules. It's the willingness to love, to forgive, and to be present even in the most difficult moments. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely at peace. I had fought quietly, patiently, and with courage, and the reward was more than I could imagine: a family whole, a grandson happy, and a home filled with love. The envelope, the letter, and every brave word spoken along the way had mattered. Our story began with tension and fear, but it ended with trust, understanding, and joy. And as I whispered a final promise to myself, I knew one truth with certainty: love, patience, and honesty can overcome even the deepest fears. Our family, once fractured by control and misunderstanding, was now bound together by the strongest force of all: unconditional love. And that, I realized, is the greatest gift anyone can ever give or receive.